Hey folks, my name is Enriquez and you are watching Uncensored.
This is Enriquez. Nickname Blackhand of the Mexican Mafia. Prison gang politics.
Today we're going to do a little profile on an old buddy of mine by the name of Michael Lynne Thompson. A lot of you may know the name and recognize it immediately as he has a large social media footprint. He had his own YouTube site. He did a couple of interviews with Vlad TV. Came out on the MSNBC Lockup Raw. He did the Michael Francis podcast and started his own channel by the name of Tree Frog, I believe. And there have always been some kind of controversy about Michael Thompson. You know, a lot of people criticize him and call him the Wes Watson of the Aryan Brotherhood. And I won't talk disparagingly about Mike. I know him very well. I met him in Lancaster at SEG when I was housed there after returning from court. In fact, he was my next door neighbor. And I like it. We took a liking towards each other. We used to talk to the vent all the time, and he could relate to what I was going through because I was cooperating at the time. He had finished his cooperation early on, testifying against the Aryan Brotherhood. Mike Thompson was an Aryan Brotherhood commission member who dropped out of the AB early on after his participation in that specific organized crime group. He was originally convicted of, I believe it was 2 murders, which he denied participation in, which is surprising in and of itself, right? That Mike Thompson went to the California Board of Prison Hearings after serving 45 years and was able to assert his innocence in the crimes, never accepting responsibility for participation, and to be granted parole and not receive criticism from the governor's reversal panel. In fact, he breezed right through. He breezed right through the parole process. Governor Newsom let him go during the time I was incarcerated, and it gave me hope. It really did give me hope that when they released Michael Thompson, somebody who equaled my notoriety, I believed that I was going to receive parole soon after that, but I didn't. In Michael Thompson's case, the governor approved his parole. He was released, and he was indicted later on for unemployment, EDD fraud. I mean, it's well publicized. There are a lot of articles and YouTubers, content creators that did segments on him. Michael Thompson became involved in a fraud scheme in which they enrolled multiple homeless individuals in for unemployment benefits, and a lot of the evidence revealed that some of those signatures and handwritten notes were in Michael's hand. He was ultimately convicted and received a prison sentence. He's currently housed in Kern Valley State Prison, actually, serving his sentence. And unbeknownst to the general public, Michael Thompson was up for parole recently. On December 17th, 2025, Michael Thompson received a NEPD review. That's a nonviolent eligibility parole date, right? So anybody convicted of a nonviolent offense is eligible for parole, right? You have to serve the base term. In fact, nonviolent offender parole review process for determinately sentenced persons. A nonviolent offender parole review is a process in which the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation refers certain determinately sentenced persons convicted of nonviolent offenses to the board for review and possible release. Mike was eligible for that, right? He was eligible for this process, and he was denied. He was denied. You know, the process is when a determinately sentenced nonviolent person will be referred to the Board of Parole hearings for review. At least 35 days before a person's NPED, they will be referred to the Board of Parole for a review and possible release if the person is more than 180 days from the earliest possible release date. Incarcerated persons will be provided written notice of the outcome of the referral decision by the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So 35 days before the 160 days. So he's getting close to getting out. Mike is short to the house and may already be released. I don't know. But he was referred to the nonviolent parole review panel and was reviewed by a deputy commissioner. During that process, they notify victims, the district attorney's office, so they can submit opposition letters to his parole or support his parole. In this case, I believe that the BPH, the Board of Commissioners, would not take a chance at all on Michael Thompson. Michael Thompson has destroyed his credibility with the Board of Prison Hearings. In fact, he might be a pariah to them. They took a chance, and that may reflect on the people that afforded him that opportunity: the governor's office, the review panel, the BPH. They do not like to make mistakes, particularly when lifers recidivate. Mike Thompson served 45 years. He obviously, in the board's eyes, hoodwinked them by professing to be rehabilitated. And I don't doubt that he's changed some of his ways, but some he hasn't, obviously. He's made some serious errors in judgment. And that came back to bite him on the ass, as evidenced by his current term of imprisonment and incarceration. There are some other things he's got to overcome. I'm certain that Mike's going to come back and make another social media appearance. I think that everybody wants to hear what he has to say, but one of the problems that Mike has is not accepting responsibility for his actions, right? As evidenced by, the denial of participation in the eliminations that he was convicted of initially. I don't know what he said in this parole hearings, if he accepted responsibility for his participation in the activities during his tenure as an AB member. But even in this process, he called it an error in judgment and never accepted responsibility. In fact, he took it to trial. He was offered a deal. He took it to trial and was convicted. And I think that's the credibility issue is going to haunt him forever. I remember in one instance, I watched an interview that he participated in, and he said that he dispatched, his word was dispatched, 14 Northern Hispanic inmates with a baseball bat, which I knew to be not true, right? There are some other instances, in fact, a lot of them, where he went on social media platforms and made these profound and outrageous claims, right? And it affected his credibility. People started calling him the Wes Watson of the AB, and fanciful tales that he made up. And I think that's really serious when it comes to social media. I mean, look, this is social media. You can say whatever you want, do whatever you want, and nobody really cares, right? I mean, I personally care about credibility, right? And the veracity of my word. And I think that if Mike's ever going to be taken as a serious creator, that he has to own up to some things and just put it on the table. That's just the way it is, And I'm not critiquing him by any stretch of the imagination. I support him completely, will help him any way I can. I've always said that about Michael Thompson. I like the guy, and I think he's had a hard life. A lot of it self-inflicted, just like my life was. I'm no better than Mike. I'm no better than anybody. But I think that Michael Lynne Thompson faces a rough road ahead. I hope that he gets out and just lives out the rest of his years, because he's older. I think he's like 75 years old. He's older now, and at the end of the arc, and I wish him well. I do wish him well. I hope that he gets out and he's prolific at creating content, that he's able to succeed in YouTube and our other social media platforms, or just do what he does and live a normal life, trying to live a normal life. I don't know that that's really possible after the lives we've lived, but I mean, you can acquire some semblance of normalcy and live in peace. And I hope that he finds that peace. I know that there's been a lot of turmoil in media surrounding and swirling around him, and he's going to receive some when he's released. I think that everybody's going to run out there and do a video like, Michael Thompson released, and they're going to make his whereabouts known because he no longer has protection. But, I hope that he goes out there and just sails off into the sunset with his wife, with his beautiful wife, and they live the rest of their life in peace. But that was the gist of it. Michael Thompson received parole eligibility review on December 17th, 2025. He was denied. His admission date was on May 9th, 2025. and he had a relatively short sentence. I believe that he received credit for time served for house arrest and when he was on a GPS system. Uh, so I think he received credit for time served plus he's a nonviolent parole offender, so he has certain time cuts coming. I don't think he's going to receive any breaks. He's not going to receive any breaks in terms of time cuts unless they are mandated by the laws of California if he participates in work programs or rehabilitative programs. I know that he's going to face a very difficult parole. He's going to have GPS. He's going to go out on another 3 year ankle monitor, and that's pretty rough. That GPS device on your ankle, and it's very difficult. It's uncomfortable. You have to hide it. It's embarrassing when you're at a restaurant or something and your pant leg lifts up and people can see it there. And there are a lot of constraints in that type of in custody release because you're literally in custody when you're on parole, and your parole can be revoked for any reason. And if Michael Thompson missteps in any way, his parole will be revoked. I'm certain that DAPO, the Division of Adult Parole Operations, is livid that he ran this scam and he got over on them. BPH is livid that he ran this scam and got over on them. The governor's office is livid that they released him and he recidivated. A lot of people were disappointed and embarrassed, quite frankly. Embarrassed that they went out on a limb for him and he essentially, shoved pie in their face. So he's going to face some difficulties when he's on parole. It's not going to be an easy parole for him. He's going to be on high control parole probably. He's a PIC case. Obviously, it's a public interest case. So he's got a hard 19, even if he only has a couple of months to do. Hard 19 is a classification score where your custody level means that you can't go to a level 1, housing, dorms, all that stuff. There's a lot of restrictions. You can't work outside the gate, all kinds of stuff. So he has all these restrictions, all these administrative designations that are placed on him by the CDC, and DAPO will place a shit ton on him as well. They're not going to give him the room to do anything. And I think he's prepared for that. Look, life outside the prison is far better than life inside the prison, right? And I can't even fathom what it would be like to return to prison, to see the day room from your window or look out the opaque window that you can't see anything out of unless there's a chip on the opacity of the window, right? They cover the windows in the back of your cell with this spray and it looks like a fog, right? And if you're lucky, you got a couple chips in it and you can look out that little chip and see life out there, see COs walking to their cars and visitors arriving, depending on your view from your cell. Or you get the view to the day room and the inside of your cell with the paint peeling. It's ugly. It's really ugly, and he's living that now. And I really feel empathy for him for having to return to prison. But again, self-inflicted wound, and I just know he's going to face challenges. Right? He's going to face challenges. He's a resilient individual. He's an intelligent individual, and he'll figure it out. He'll figure it out. He's a survivor. He survived this long. He'll survive this as well, and I wish him well. I wish him well. I hope that he prospers and succeeds, and he stays away from the fanciful tales, and if he's going to do social media, just do what he does, and establishes some veracity and credibility, because that is sorely missing in a lot of his segments. And I don't say that as a criticism. I truly don't. I mean, like I said, far be it from me to criticize somebody because, my credibility was shot at one time, and I know it's a hard thing to come back from. It's difficult when everybody in the world doubts you and calls you a liar and says you're a manipulator. All those things are difficult to overcome because it's a stigma, right? It's a stigma that stays with you, and oftentimes it's the first blush perception that stays with an individual, particularly if it's negative, right? I know that from firsthand. How many people have painted me as a horrible individual, and I really was. See, that's the thing. I own it. I was that individual. I did all those messed up things, and I accepted responsibility for them. And I think that's the first step for Michael, is accepting responsibility. You know, that's the first thing you're taught about in insight when you go to the board, is like, you have to accept responsibility. Don't minimize, don't rationalize. Just step forward and say, I did it. I did it. You know, it was easy money or whatever. And yeah, I'm responsible for doing this and doing that and doing all these other horrible things. But that's who I was and not who I am today. That's a step. You know, I think that's the initial step he has to take. And that's hard for some people, to admit their fallibility, right? It's hard for people to say I was wrong, or I was less than, or I was a horrible human being. It's very difficult to say that you were a monster, you know? It wasn't easy for me, so it can't be easy for Michael. Uh, but that's it, folks. That's the news we have, that Michael Thompson was denied nonviolent parole offender review. He's going to serve out his whole term, and he'll be released in the near future. With that said, folks, that'll wrap up this episode. Hope you have a nice day. Stay safe. Peace out.
This is Rene Enriquez. Nickname Boots.